In this video, I'm going to compare all the 2-room Flexi in upcoming BTO launch to find out which one is the best buy. We are also going to address some of your burning questions such as who is eligible to buy 2-room Flexi, what is a short lease 2-room Flexi, is it still subjected to subsidy recovery and MOP, and what is the difference between 2-room Flexi Type 1 and Type 2. So for this upcoming February launch, interestingly, all of the 5 BTO projects have 2-room Flexi options. Usually, if the location is mature, then it may or may not have 2-room Flexi. But this time around, it's good to know that even for Kallang and Queenstown BTO, you can apply for 2-room Flexi. The fact that more 2-room Flexi flats are being offered is good news because based on the previous BTO application rate, seniors application rate is 3.8 while singles application rate is a whopping 26.3. That means for every 2-room Flexi flat allocated for singles, there are more than 26 people balloting. That's mind-blowing. To help you decide, I have summarized how many 2-room Flexi units are offered in each project, what are the facilities that will be available in the cluster, nearby health facilities, and also nearby hawker or food centers. Why? Well, I'd figure the main demographics who applied for 2-room Flexi are typically singles or seniors, which means school options are not very relevant, but proximity to hawker center and major healthcare facility is important. Note that when I say health facilities, I don't mean like neighborhood doctors, but at least a polyclinic or a hospital. Same goes with food options. I am excluding standalone restaurants or cafes and focusing on hawker center or food center where there are different options clubbed together. Let's start with Kallang. There will be around 260 units of 2-room Flexi here. There are 2 polyclinics around 3 km away, but if you need to go to a hospital, the nearest one is SGH, which is about 6.4 kilometers away. In terms of food options, the closest one will be the eating house at the nearby Tanjung Ru Riverfront BTO, but you can also cross the bridge to Kallang Wave Mall or go to Jalan Batu Hawker Center. Next, we have Queenstown BTO. We can see that Queenstown has the most amount of 2-room Flexi flat offered here with 450 units. Even compared to the other flat types in Queenstown BTO, 2-room Flexi is like almost half of it, which is quite extraordinary. When you drill down, it actually makes sense. Queenstown, being a mature town, has a large amount of older population, and for singles, it is also appealing because of its proximity to CBD for those working there. In terms of nearby healthcare facilities, Alexandra Hospital is around 1 kilometer away, while Queenstown Polyclinic is about 1.8 kilometers. Alternatively, NUH is about 3 kilometers away. FYI that there's also an active aging center in the nearby Queensway Canopy BTO across the street. It's not a polyclinic or a hospital, but I'm just letting you know for your reference. In terms of food option, unfortunately, Queenstown BTO doesn't have an eating house on the site, but there are several hawker centers in less than 2 kilometers away, so it is just a short bus ride away. For the Woodlands BTO, there will be 330 2-room Flexi flats offered here, so that's also quite a lot. Woodlands statistically tend to have a high demand, so I'm guessing that is why the HDB are offering quite a lot of flats here. It seems like the government realized that the nearest hospital is a bit far away, so recently Woodlands Health Campus just opened. I googled, and although the name is Health Campus, apparently it is a government hospital, so you can expect a wide range of service there. In terms of food, there will be an eating house on the premise, so you just need to go down. Alternatively, you can ride a bus to Marsiling Food Center or Kampung Admiralty Hawker Center, which both are about 2 kilometers away. What about Yishun BTO? Well, since the 2 projects are located opposite of each other, they have similar features. Each site offered 100 plus 2-room Flexi, but just a watch out for singles and couples who want to apply for 2-room Flexi here because, according to HDB, for 2-room Flexi, they are still allocating at least 40% or a minimum of 100 units for seniors. So, for example, if the Yishun BTO only offers 160 units of 2-room Flexi and then you times it by 40%, that means you have 64, right? But this is under 100 units, which is not enough options for seniors. That means 100 units are allocated for seniors, which leaves about 60 units for first-timer families, first-timer singles, and second-timer families. Same logic applies for other BTO projects. So, for the Yishun project, I would say that non-seniors who are applying for the 2-room Flexi here would have a very limited chance. In terms of healthcare facilities, the nearest hospital or polyclinic now is about 3 kilometers away. But the master plan did say there will be a nearby healthcare childcare facilities in the future. However, we don't know the details yet. In terms of food option, there is an eating house at the first Yishun site. Otherwise, you can also take the bus to go to Chongpang or Yishun Park for more options. So, which one is the best? Well, the word best itself is very subjective, right? Personally, I think for seniors, the most logical option would be Queenstown BTO. Why? Well, it's a mature area and you have several major hospitals nearby, and you are also a short bus ride away from different hawker centers. I believe it's not a coincidence that HDB launched the most amount of Turun Flexi in this project. They must have anticipated that there will be high demand for Turun Flexi here. For singles, I think Kallang is a good option. Why? Well, the proximity to the CBD area will be very helpful to cut down your commute time to work. Besides, you can just cross the bridge to the stadium area to exercise. Besides the typical running and cycling, you can also do indoor rock climbing there, paddle a canoe or dragon boat, or you can also play beach volleyball and many more. Of course, I'm just talking in general. I wouldn't know whether you have other considerations such as proximity to your family members, etc. Okay, let's talk about eligibility. HDB Turun Flexi BTO flats are typically meant for single-person households or the elderly. But of course, the flat could also accommodate a couple or a small family. The biggest change is now, singles above the age of 35 will be able to apply for Turun Flexi flats in all locations from upcoming BTO launch and not only in the non-mature areas. This leads to our next topic, which is the lease for Turun Flexi flats. Turun Flexi is unique because it has the option for a shorter lease term. If you are above the age of 55, then you are eligible to buy the flat at a shorter lease of between 15 to 45 years in 5-year increments. But the lease must cover you or the youngest buyer until the age of 95. So you can't just anyhow pick the lowest lease to pay the cheapest price. The intention is to give retirees an option so that you have more money for retirement instead of having all of your assets locked up in a flat that is now too big for you once all of your kids have already left the house. Another unique thing about the Turun Flexi scheme is that Singaporeans above the age of 55 are allowed to apply for it even though you have purchased 2 new flats directly from HDB in the past. However, if you have used up your 2 chances in the past, you can only opt for the short lease option and you have to pay a resale levy adjusted from $30,000 depending on the length of the lease. Please note that your monthly household income should not exceed $14,000. But the interesting part is, they don't take your savings into consideration. So let's say in the past you have a 4-room flat and then you sell it. Let's say you have profited $500,000. Some goes to your CPF, some goes to bank account as savings. But since you are retirees, you don't have a monthly income, which means your monthly income is under $14,000, right? Even though asset-wise, you have quite a lot of money in the bank. So that sounds great, right? So what about singles above the age of 35 but under 55 years old? Well, since you are still in the productive age range, you can only buy Turun Flexi flat with the standard 99-year leasehold and your monthly household income ceiling is $7,000 because you are buying it as a single person. Of course, there are other eligibility requirements such as if you are buying the flat with other applicants, then one of you must be a Singaporean citizen, or if you have other HDB flat, then you have to dispose it within 6 months of completing your flat purchase, etc. For more details about eligibility, please do visit the HDB website. Now let's talk about whether or not Turun Flexi is subjected to the subsidy recovery or subsidy clawback for prime and plus projects, because I know there are a lot of confusion about this. The answer is, it depends. If you are buying Turun Flexi on shorter lease, then no, you are not subjected to subsidy recovery. Why? Because you can only sell the flat back to HDB. You cannot sell it in the open market anyway. But remember that only seniors can buy Turun Flexi on short lease. On the other hand, if you are buying a Turun Flexi with the 99-year leasehold, then yes, you are still subjected to subsidy recovery for plus and prime projects regardless of your age. How much is the subsidy recovery percentage? Well, it depends on the project. For example, if we take a look at the October BTO launch, it ranges between 6 to 8% and it will be calculated against the valuation or transaction price, whichever higher. You might ask, what about the MOP? Is Turun Flexi still subjected to the 10-year MOP if it's a plus or a prime project? From HDB's press release, it seems like the answer is yes. I mean, for the 99-year leasehold Turun Flexi, right, I think it makes sense if you still have the 10-year MOP. What I'm not so sure about out is if it's on a shorter lease term. I couldn't find the straight answer online, but because the HDB's press release about the MOP doesn't specify a breakdown based on the flat type, then I assume it's applicable for all flat types. Let me know if you have more information than I do. Now let's talk about what's the difference between two-room flexi type 1 and type 2. The easiest way to explain is probably with the picture. Here is an example of the typical two-room flexi type 1. As you can see, you have a bedroom, a living room, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a bomb shelter. The size is typically around 38 square meters, which I think is good enough for singles or for a couple. Based on their HDB showroom flat that I have visited in the past, the bedroom can still fit a queen-size bed and a sliding wardrobe, so it's not so bad. But obviously, if you live in a two-room flexi, you have to be well organized as you can run out of space really quickly. Now let's take a look at the floor plan of a typical two-room flexi type 2. It's very similar, but the difference is that you have this study room in the flat as well. It's not exactly a second bedroom because typically the size is very small and it won't fit a queen bed or a wardrobe, but it's good enough for a home office or a hobby room, whatever you want to use it for. The size of a two-room flexi type 2 is typically 48 square meters, so probably a couple with a child can still live there. Hopefully this helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!